That thing.
Stick it up there.
Yep. Well, that being said, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. I am really happy to be here.
Good.
Yeah.
So, John, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience who may not know who you are?
Yeah, so my name's John D. Hanson. The only reason I throw the middle initial is not because I actually have used that since I was a child, and I didn't know how big of a deal that was. But it turns out there's a lot of John Hansons, even if you spell it John-Hanson. But that middle initial is really important for branding because there aren't a lot of people that use it. So the reason I use that John D. Hanson, you can find all different. If you're interested, you can learn a lot about me through LinkedIn. That's my favorite platform. I have my own website, johndhanson.com, YouTube. But if you look at my LinkedIn, which is kind of like a living resume, I like that because I can really learn a lot about somebody. You'll see that there's a lot of variety in what I've done. And I think that diversity is actually a strength because I've got such experience in so many different industries that has helped me in the business coaching that I do and the speaking and the workshop facilitation has really helped me where I can bring in this variety of experiences that has proven to be a strength as opposed to being really skilled in just one industry. That's also a strength. But I found that because I've worked with a variety of people, having a variety of experience has really proven well there. So nonprofit, for-profit, the military, on my own, W-2, so
And now,
a whole mix of things.
Partnering with the Idea Farm.
Yes,
right?
of course. I mean, isn't that the most exciting thing and why we're here?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're actually, if we condense your entire world of experiences, you are a B2B sales expert, but you also know how to leverage the power of LinkedIn to grow your personal and your professional business brand.
Yes.
Do you feel like that encapsulates it?
Yeah, because I've done B2C, both sales and ops and management. But B2B is just, I love that world. There's something about it that B2B tends to be a little more sticky. They are less demanding. And when you provide clear return, then they're not only do you keep business, retain the business longer, but referrals come more easily or more naturally with higher dollar amounts attached. And for all those reasons, I liked B2B because they really tend to be very solutions focused, of course. And then when I discovered the world of story brand a few years ago when I read Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand, that's where I started connecting intentionally with people that followed that because I'm like, it's like a fill-in-the-blank script about a story-driven, because Harvard Business Review showed that when you combine data, facts, whatever, with a story that engages, it has to engage, but if it's a story that engages, people remember that 21 times better than just the facts, details, features, and benefits. And so that when I learned that you were story brand marketing driven, I'm like, oh, this is fantastic because those things resonate. And that's what actually moves the needle about, emotion buys and logic pays for it. That's what connects with emotion are the stories.
Yeah, I think that's why we hit it off, right? I mean, the first time we hopped on a call together, because everything that we do at its very essence is storytelling, is connecting with audiences, is telling that story and figuring out where to draw the emotion from. Especially in this world of AI, of technology getting so much more prevalent, the power lies in the storytelling, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Because that's what bedtime stories are about. The reason why that study showed that stories were so effective is that when we engage with a story, it releases those feel-good endorphins. So when you could read the same dang book 100 times to a toddler, it's not about the book. They have it memorized by now. It's not the book. It's the engagement with the story and that time together, and that where it's quiet and it's dark and it's just you and that child in the story. So the story is really behind why they would want to work with. Everybody has features and benefits.
100%.
Everybody's like the best thing out there, I would hope. So what are the differentiators? It's the stories that are unique, that are part of the differentiation of they can't say, well, that's not true. Everybody's experience has validity to it. And so their story is already a self-validating proof, social proof as you call it, that marketing with that story behind it emotionally connects and gets results.
I think that my favorite part about storytelling is the way we tell the story, how we tell the story, at what time and at what degree. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's like the intensity creates like a build-up. And then that build-up, we really could deliver that. And then you can see the results. Like when we launch a campaign, we're weaving the story of that campaign.
Yes.
And then you see like the client's like, okay, I don't fully understand how this is going to pan out. And then once you see the results, they're like super excited, and you see the emotions and the results, which it really drives.
Yeah, and that's what I like about that 7-point script. You know, Hollywood doesn't start off with the punchline. That would be a really short movie. There's got to be some sort of build-up, some sort of tension, right? And it can be a positive or a negative tension. The negative could be pain points. The positive could be we're growing like crazy, growing pains of like we want to keep growing, but we're concerned like we're outgrowing, or we have clients who maybe were a good fit when we started off, but now they're not such a great fit. Mm-hmm. And we want more of, we've identified who our ideal clients are, right? Mm-hmm. And those are who we want to go after now that we know what that is. But it's a lot of trial and error and experimentation. Mm-hmm. And in growth, when you're in startup, like you practically need, who wouldn't love to have all ideal clients? But you know, when you're in startup mode, it's like you're just trying to get clients. Yep. And then you're figuring out as you spend time with those clients.
Oh, okay, these are the best kind of clients.
Exactly. So that's that part of figuring things out. But I still like going back to that story brand script of that 7-point process of it's not all about the marketing company. Mm-mm. It's all about, well, who's the hero in the story? Because for healthcare providers, say, right, or dentists, the dentist doesn't want to be the hero. They want their patients to be the hero.
Absolutely.
The ones that have the pain that won't go away or the sudden thing in the night.
And all of our stories when we're working with those healthcare patients are how their confidence is restored, how their smile is restored. How did this service impact that person's life? Mm-hmm. As opposed to the practice. But that sometimes I feel like can be very hard to step out of. I know you mentioned LinkedIn as this living resume.
Yeah.
And I know, Jose, you're also pretty new to LinkedIn this year, joining for the first time. I think it would be so powerful while we have you here to understand more about truly the power behind LinkedIn, how to leverage it for individual business leaders and then businesses.
Yeah.
Because it's like a taboo. Like I honestly didn't fully understand LinkedIn. I probably still don't fully understand LinkedIn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think it's like a mystery.
Well, if you went back to 16, I didn't have any social media. I know, shame on me. But I was in a corporate role where everything came to me. I was in a support role. I wasn't in business development. I wasn't in sales. I had plenty on my plate. I didn't need to add something else to it. But then when I got into business development in 16, I'm highly competitive with myself. Not really towards others, but I'm like, you give me a goal and I want to beat that goal.
I'm the same way.
And I'm going to use every resource available to me to do that. Mm-hmm. So this was B2B sales. And I'm like, so how can I beat this record? Which I did by 30%. But I had no previous experience in this industry. I thought I've got to use all the tools available to me. I'm really good at earning trust quickly. So I had that. But it's like, what other tools do I need to use? And so when I'd heard of LinkedIn, I kind of knew what it was. But I looked into it. I'm like, this is a game changer, especially in a B2B. You're like, but John, I'm in a B2C. Like my customers are, it's B2C. It's not other businesses. But when I understood and I studied and kind of looked into marketing and branding, and I understood that this LinkedIn not only had the ability to give me qualified prospects, when I went into a meeting or a conversation, a potential sale, I knew more about that person and their organization than if I just had a name and an email.
Oh, yeah.
So I could study and research the heck out of opportunities before I ever went in. So I'm leading with questions like, I noticed you've been with the company for 5 years, or I noticed you started off here and you got promoted. This automatically communicates to the people you're talking to that you know something about them and that they matter. That
you care enough to do the research. I'm a huge proponent of research and going into a meeting, just understanding, because it just gives you, okay, you also know what angle to go at. Mm-hmm. You know what matters. If you can identify based on their past, based on how they talk about what they do and their professional experiences, then you can understand what's most important to them.
Yes.
And then if you are, whether or not you want to partner with them, whether you have an opportunity or it opens that door to, they're going to be most receptive if we have that conversation like this.
Yeah. And just because you're like, gosh, I don't have that many. I started off with literally nothing, and over the course of several years, grew it to over 28,000 now. Around the world.
Connections, 28,000 connections. That is wild.
Yeah, I did it all organically because a few years ago I tried to automate that and ended up filling my connections with people who weren't a good fit. They weren't active. They weren't decision makers, and so I'm still kind of weeding some of those out. But I know the value of LinkedIn. It's the most trusted. It's the most powerful platform out there, B2B or otherwise, but I think especially B2B.
Just professionally speaking, that is the place that people go to post about their career, to document themselves. I noticed this is so bad, but no matter what, someone could be completely dark on every other social media, but they'll have a LinkedIn profile. So if you want to find out more information about them, I mean, it's great. And even just understanding what school they went to, even just understanding what they studied or how long they've been in the professional field. I don't know. It's really nice.
For me, I don't know why. I kind of like going to sometimes some of the meetings kind of like in a mystery. And then that can be like the self-discovery of that in that meeting.
It's my worst nightmare. And that shows you, though, different like personalities, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes, I don't know, maybe you think that having too much information gives you a preconceived notion about someone. That's true. Right?
That can be a danger there.
Sometimes you meet up with a client for the first time and you're actually a potential client for the first time and you're just having coffee, right? You're breaking the ice, you're getting to know them as a person, and you're also understanding what they actually need versus what I think you need or what especially, you've been in this position, this is what the value I could probably extract from you or give you versus just having a conversation and say, hey, how can I help? Or X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, so that's the difference between consultative selling and the older school style of selling. Consultative selling is question-based, so regardless of how much I know of them, I always I intentionally have as many well-worded questions in advance before I meet with someone. And now I've done it so much that I can preview somebody's LinkedIn profile 5 minutes before a call, and I can start off with what we have in common, who we know, shared interests to break the ice. And then I can start asking really well-worded questions about what's most important to them, what are they looking to achieve, because when you start off with questions like that are open-ended but have a lot of meaning to them, whether you know a lot about them or know nothing about them, it's really the questions you ask. John Maxwell, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions, really good book. There's 2 sentences in that book that I have in my mind all the time, and it says the quality of the answers are dependent upon the quality of the questions. Ooh. The better questions you ask, the better answers you get. So while icebreakers are good, if your icebreaker can be unlike any other icebreaker question, that's like, for example, I know enough about them to know what they care about because I've looked at their nonprofits they're involved in, the charities, what they do in their off time. So I already know that they're giving people because they've listed what they do and they're still active in it. I noticed that you really care about the community because you've been serving this food pantry for 10 years. What got you started in that? That is a question that nobody else breaks the ice with, and it takes it to a whole nother depth. And I learned that just from scanning somebody's LinkedIn profile. It gives you an idea. Mm-hmm. Your first impression is a really good first impression before you have a conversation with someone.
I like that. It gives you an opportunity on unique ways to dive deeper.
Yes.
As you connect with somebody.
Yes.
The other thing that you mentioned, and I think is so valuable about LinkedIn, is you can see super quickly what connections you have in common. And secondary connections have gotten me to some of the most incredible conversations that have led to the most incredible relationships. And it's because, you know so-and-so. And there's this immediate, you are talking to a complete stranger, okay? Mm-hmm. However, they seem less like a stranger because you know somebody in common.
Yeah.
And it just breaks the ice. It's the exact same thing if you had a friend give like an actual referral. Mm-hmm. And even if it's just a text message or email, like it is wild. LinkedIn facilitates that on such a broad scale. And it seems so much like less scary.
I think I'm an introvert. Definitely think I'm an introvert. After this conversation.
I can see that. And then what I've told my introvert friends, as I said, they're like, I don't know if I want to go. So I said, if you go with just a handful of really good questions, they will carry the conversation. Especially if you look for the ones, not the other introvert. You've got to look for people who are extroverted, that are having like conversation after conversation. Not the ones who don't breathe. Not those kind of people. I mean the ones that carry a conversation naturally. If you spot them in a crowd and you just come with 4 great questions, they will carry the conversation for you, especially if it's like networking and you want to make sure you talk to different people.
And the funny thing is, Jose says he's an introvert, and he's really, really good at that. He's good at asking amazing questions and listening. And he gets people to open up because I get too excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, let me tell you about my experience,
Can't imagine. Yes. No, the high level of excitement, I get that.
So it's one of those where there are, I would say, there are highs and lows with each personality type. My high is it's so much easier for me to make that initial reach out. I have no problem. I could talk to a wall. Let's go.
You could talk to a wall?
Yeah, I can and I have. I did speech and debate team for all 4 years of high school, nationally competing. And you walk into a high school at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning and you see kids in suit and ties, like business suits, talking to walls.
You got pictures? We need picture proof.
Casey,
please post it.
We are not going to have a picture proof. Woo. But that my low or my downside would be that I can get carried away, and in my excitement to connect with someone, I can share and I leave less room for them to share. So I would say with introverts, it might be harder for you to get started, that initial I have to do that reach out. I have to, connect with someone. But when you actually sit down with someone, you're going to end up with more value out of that conversation because you naturally give them more space and people feel more comfortable around you. My energy can be intimidating sometimes. My energy can be a lot and just can cause people naturally to chill. You have an energy, Jose, that draws people out. And that is so powerful. So you just got to push through that initial newness of using a platform like LinkedIn to connect with people and reach out.
Yeah. I want to get your take on this. The way I started meeting, and probably people do this too, is my icebreaker, the one I've been using now a lot, is tell me about your week. How's your week going? You know what I'm saying? Simple question. And then after they give both our answers, I usually go into hey, I respect your time. I know you respect my time. So let's get this party started. And then we usually started talking about what they actually need. What is your thoughts on that?
I would, because I'm naturally an optimist. I'm an eternal optimist. And thank goodness I married a realist. Because if I married another optimist, we'd be living in a box down by the river. Hey, the kids have somewhere to play, like that. So I'm glad I married a realist because she balances me out. What I would do is I'd flip it to the positive of saying, when you ask them about their week, what's one highlight of your week? I'd love to hear what went well for you this week. Where you're not just listening to them, but you're also getting them to share a win. We're our toughest critics, and we really can dwell too long on what didn't go right.
Oh, gosh.
When there's so many lots of little things that did. And so if you can point them to what went well in their week, then you're helping celebrate a win with them.
And from a neurological perspective, they are unintentionally associating the positive thing of their week with that conversation with you.
Emma, it sounds like you've been reading a lot of psychology books lately. You speak to walls, and then
I have a lot of free time. I don't have a lot of free time, actually, in fact. But no, I find it interesting how the human brain works and those associations that you make and just these things that come naturally to us that actually there's a lot of science behind.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I got my homework for this weekend. I'm going to scrape your Facebook account and look for that pictures.
Well, I really love, so I was a little networker, a power networker. And my dad for years told me that your network is your net worth. And he was all about connect. And also I was, thinking I was going to be in politics. Growing up, I was doing voter registration drives before I could even vote, hosting voter registration drives. So I was really, really, and in the world of politics and policy, it's all about who you know. Because in a democracy, ideally, you have to have those connections to get anything passed, to get anything done. And so I was in all these little youth organizations, and I was meeting people from all over, and my dad was like, that's great, but don't lose touch with them because you never know where people are going to go and do. And it's so powerful. And LinkedIn became this I was in, I think, my freshman year of college when I started to really put thought into my LinkedIn, and none of my other friends did. And what you said is you have this really diverse LinkedIn. I do too. You would take a look and you'd probably scratch your head what? This doesn't really make sense, but it's interesting.
Yes,
and people see that career path. They see someone's life laid out before them and what they choose to share. And it can get the conversation started, but it also makes you feel like you have more substance, especially when you just see someone, they don't even have a real photo, or they have maybe their photo and just their current job listing.
Me.
We get a history.
Hey, believe it or not, you are better than most. So there are over 1 billion users on LinkedIn now across the world.
That's so
1
wild.
billion. But of those, only 300 million are active. So it's a third that are doing anything on the platform. And then the percentages get even lower of people that regularly, daily use, and then even lower than that, the people that actually post, that are creators. You put yourself in single-digit percentage of that billion-plus users if you simply share who you are, what you do, and stories. And videos are consumed 21 times more on LinkedIn than any other kinds of content. So if you really want to funnel it down to being in the top 1%, if you are on the platform daily, posting something daily that ideally is a video, 3 minutes or less, you're in the top single-digit percentage of the billion-plus users on the platform. Why is that important? Because if your customers are on LinkedIn, or people that serve your customers are on LinkedIn, then if you're doing just that little bit intentionally, and that's what I did. Just over the years, I just consistently did that. I didn't do the Gary V model of 100 posts a day, because then you're posting over top of yourself. Just twice a day. I just twice a day. That's where you'll get the engagement, because the algorithm changed on LinkedIn. Now the algorithm favors engagement, conversations, comments that are more than great post, but something that has meaning to it, a sentence or two, that start sharing and then liking things. But it's really about engagement, authentic conversations. Why? Because they want people to stay on the platform more. So they want people to engage. And the thing that engages people nowadays, while there are people like me who are readers, what really stops the scroll is some sort of video. Graphics can, but if they look commercial, if they look like a commercial, they're actually counterproductive, because then they're usually feature and benefit heavy. They usually look like they were made for a commercial. So a lot of B2B companies think that because they're regularly putting stuff on LinkedIn, that's going to do the trick. But depending on what it is, it can be counterproductive, or you can blend in with everybody else and just white noise. It's really the stories that people remember.
I have to, Jose, do you remember the strategy that you put together for an unnamed good friend of ours who, to boost her LinkedIn?
Her? Yes.
Yes. Tell me, I think this is such a good mini case study of why this kind of content works. I want you to talk about what you recommended, the thoughtful leadership strategy, and the result.
So the concept of thoughtful leadership strategies, it was a two-pronged approach. The first approach is to stabilize or put the groundwork to show that she's a professional and she's an expert in her field.
Okay.
And the second approach was to highlight wins for her clients. For example, this week she's making a video about, let's say she's a dentist, right? Something about gum health or cancer screening, right? She's educating the community about why this is important. And then on Friday that week, she's making another post hey, Emma came into the practice today. This is what we did for her. Look at her beautiful new smile. You know what I'm saying? Just highlighting her client. And I'd say post it twice a week for a period of time, and let's see how it actually kind of grows. And her account grew drastically.
And within, I think, 3 or 4 weeks, she sent us this text message. I screenshotted it. I was like, we need to keep this. That was oh my gosh, my engagement has tripled. The number of people that are viewing, I've got these new connections. She said, I was open to trying something, but I honestly didn't think it would be this effective, because she was active on LinkedIn before, but she was doing a lot of reposting. She wasn't posting her own original content. And if she was, it wasn't video. And we really pushed her towards video, sharing herself, sharing her expertise. And that thoughtful leadership strategy, we have worked with clients in every kind of industry, B2B, B2C, professional services, all of that. And it works because the principles are the same. And LinkedIn is such a good platform because it's low-hanging fruit. You have all of these, you have this captive audience of people that spend their time on there, whether they are looking for new positions, they're looking to network, they're looking to connect, but so few people are actually posting thought leadership.
We even took it to another level too. So we went from okay, let's say you're a leader in the company, you're not an entrepreneur, but so you're a leader in the company. Cool. We have a company level, right? So let's say this is the company facing, and then how do you fit within your role inside the company as an entrepreneur? For my belief is an entrepreneur doesn't need to be hey, you're actually building your own company.
No.
An entrepreneur is somebody that's solving a problem and constantly innovating. So you could be an entrepreneur within that ecosystem, right?
Yes.
So it's how do you highlight the company, and then how do you highlight yourself? So we took that thoughtful leadership and we expanded outwards as well.
So well said, because entrepreneurs, I did a study on this. I used ChatGPT to help me out with it, and I asked, I'm telling you, I'm a creative, so I like to write. My content is all me, but I love to use for idea generation or for clarifying or outlines. I write from outlines. So if I want an outline that's going to spur how I create, I don't create from nothing. I create from an outline. So I can say, this is the topic. Give me 7, 10, seconds. Now I can just riff off of that because I have the experiences, the case studies, the stories to go along to flesh out. So I see ChatGPT or any kind of AI tool is kind of like the skeleton, and then I put the flesh on the bones, and that's where my ability is.
I'm the opposite. I'm more like I use ChatGPT as my partner, my working buddy. Like, so I'm brainstorming with it. Like, I have a question. I'm like, okay, pretend you're a marketing expert, X, Y, and Z. I'm working on this campaign. This is my analysis. Let me know your thoughts. And then it says something. I'm like, I don't like that. So I'd be like working the problem with her.
Yep.
And versus like me having a conversation with Emma. It's kind of like that's how I treat it. At the end of the day, it's like, does it whatever spits out? Do we actually use it? Most of the time, no. But it's just a good like exercise to get the juices flowing in the brain.
Great sounding board, huh?
Exactly.
And a friend of mine uses it for that, and he calls it a her as well. He runs all kinds of things by ChatGPT, and very creative. I would say not a pure creative, but definitely entrepreneurial. So entrepreneurs there's an assumption that entrepreneurs have to start their own thing. That's an entrepreneur. I don't believe so. With that study, there were the top 7 attributes of an entrepreneur. And I alliterated them so I could remember them, but I can't tell you all of them. They all start with a C. But the number one thing that are about entrepreneurs, regardless of whether you started a company or not, is they embrace change. That's the number one attribute of someone who's entrepreneurial, is you embrace change. You could be an intrapreneur, where you're within an organization, and every organization should have an intrapreneur, because they're always thinking continuous improvement. How do we make this better? They're courageous in the fact that they take calculated risks. They're committed to continuous improvement. That's another one of how can we make this better.
Go ahead.
I think my favorite quote from Henry Ford, it was like he was saying like, I don't need to know how to build the automobile. I need to know who to hire to build the automobile. He's like, and later on, there's another quote that says like, something to the effect, don't quote me on this, but it was like, he had like 13 different doctorates. He really didn't have 13 different doctors. He just hired 13 different doctors and experts in that field to build what they need to build. And I think an entrepreneur, we recognize that we're not the full, like the subject matter expert, but we have the ability to see the problem, how to fix the problem, and the team that we need to assemble for that problem to be solved. And that could work at like outside of a corporation or inside a corporation.
Very few corporations, though, value that because they hire boxes. They don't hire people that think outside or look at the box from the outside. They hire them for this role in particular.
And then you kill that person.
Well, because it's scary. So one of my favorite things is to look at those companies that have successfully done that.
Yes.
So typically you have like the startup infrastructure where you're throwing things at the wall. There's a little bit of chaos, but you're growing fast. And, someone could come in at the lowest level and then go all the way to the top if they have the ambition and the work ethic and yada, yada. Then you start to mature. As the company starts to mature, there are necessary things that happen.
Yes.
There's structure, there's processes, but it's also so easy to silo the company off.
Yes.
Some of the best, most innovative, your Apples, your Microsofts, and the companies within those are, Google is a good example of this, is they have entire departments that are all about innovation. Like, we don't know if this is going to work.
Right.
We're going to throw a lot of money, and the best ones are like, you have total freedom. They run it like they would a startup. They identify the people within the organization who are interested in working on a project. They're innovating a problem or a challenge, and they say, you have a budget. There are no clear outcomes. See what happens.
You remember the story of the iPod?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, so like I saw the documentary with Apple, and pretty much the way that Steve Jobs had the vision for the iPod, he came in and he's like, "Hey, I want you guys just to build these features inside this device. You have, I think it was like 6 or 7 months. Figure it out. Here's a blank check." Then periodically he comes back. They came back with the prototypes, and he used to take the prototypes and smash them against the wall. I was like, not good enough. Go back to the drawing board. And people got more stressed and more stressed. But what happened was that the product got better and better because he never gave him like an actual structure of an outline. He just like, here's the ultimate goal. give him the full freedom, the full budget, but then put that extra pressure. And then every time he broke the iPod, people went back, we need to make it better. We need to make it better. And it constantly innovated the product. That's what I was thinking when you were talking.
Well, I think it's something that a lot of companies would agree with in theory, but in practice is so hard to actively you're welcoming in a degree of chaos, because creativity to the outside eye can come to play as chaos.
Yes.
And so but I think that keeps a company innovating. You have some part of it doesn't always have to be that extreme, like a complete blank check or, total freedom, but really and truly, a lot of times you might have entrepreneurs in your organization, but you're not supporting them fully. Right. And they're just staying in their lane because that's all they've been taught to do.
You wrote a book, right?
I did. I've written a few. So I've written 3. My 4th one's coming out in the fall. The second one actually that I released that I'm very proud of, that I started pre-COVID, finished after. It was like a 7-year process. I actually had the idea for the book when I wrote my very first book, which was on customer service. The first chapter was a winning attitude, and I promised myself when I started writing that if I came across a word that I thought could be rich in meaning, any word, that I'd take a break and I'd go back to the dictionary and find out all of its meanings and its origin. Where did it come from? Well, I almost didn't do that for winning because I'm like, everybody knows what winning means. But I'm like, no, I made myself a promise, so I did it. So I went to the dictionary to look it up, and I thought it was a waste of time because the first definition was, excelling in competition, blue ribbon, gold medal, all that. But it was the second definition that just changed my life. I remember where I was sitting. I remember that the world stopped for just a few seconds when I read that it was one word, all caps, and it was success. And I thought, if people don't have the right definition for winning at life, and most don't, including me up to that point, and we go with the first definition, if you're not the first, the most, Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last, right? Words to live by. If you're not first, you're last. But life doesn't work that way. Mm-mm. And if you use the second definition, and then you use your own ruler to measure that success, and then you celebrate the progress, not the 12th inch. So I interviewed highly successful people around Ohio. I had to limit it to my state of Ohio. Otherwise, I'd be interviewing people the rest of my life. I had to limit it. And then I gleaned from those conversations how they were highly successful and winning at life. And that's where I discovered that the opposite of winning at life is not failure. The opposite of winning at life is giving up. If you're the pathway to that 12th inch of success.
Clarify something. You said winning in life is giving up?
No, the opposite. He said the opposite is not failure. Because we often think, okay, if I'm not number one, like you said, like you're last, but it's so much more powerful than that. It's about not giving up. It's about persevering.
Yep. Yes. Because it's not a straight path. It's not a marathon. It is a marathon, but it's a cross-country marathon. There are turns. I just actually talked about that this morning. The video I released about winning at life was it's a cross-country marathon. It's longer than it feels, way longer than it should. It's dark in some spots, a little spooky. It's uphill a lot of times. It's rugged. There's twists and turns. You don't see the finish line from the starting line. But then every time you pass a mile marker, there's that reminder of you're farther ahead than when you started. And so the winning at life, when I interviewed these highly successful people, it was that understanding of failure was just what didn't work. And we were figuring out what didn't work so that we could identify what does. And it's one example I give in the book, Dyson, the inventor of the vacuum cleaner.
I love him. Yeah.
5,000 iterations
in
over
a shed,
5 years.
In a shed in his backyard, being
now
supported by his wife.
Jet engines. So he's come a long ways, but it took him that long because that was the motor for hair dryers, hand dryers. I've used all of those things.
And he would not stop at good enough. He knew he wanted to build something that was completely revolutionary and excellent.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where if it has, Jim Collins in Beyond Entrepreneurialism 2.0 said, we must say no to the good in order to say yes to the great. So if your goal is excellence, then you'll always go after that. If your goal is good enough, then you'll settle for 3-4 stars.
I feel like you're speaking my language right now.
What does that mean to you?
That's a complicated answer, my friend.
Well, tell me a little bit. Dig deep.
To me, I'm a visionary, right? So I feel like in this journey, like let's say like the last 10 years of my life, right? I've experimented a lot with a lot of different companies, startups, partnerships, joint ventures together, and some of them have been successful, some of them have been failures. But one of the things that I think I'm gonna give you this one back to you is like the ability to never give up, the ability to always try to work the problem, the ability to actually like, okay, we got to this state, but we could do better. We could refine better. We can keep pushing the boundaries. To its point, sometimes my teams want to kill me, aka Casey, when she makes a beautiful structure, and I'm like, this could be better, go better. And she's like, and I'm like, I'm sorry. So it's like that constant innovation to improve and continue growing.
But I think when we take a step back and we see what we're able to accomplish, and we see the quality of work that we're able to do, that's when you're like, dang, I'm proud.
Like today, like I found an old video of me like doing my first little commercial.
Yeah, old videos are good, aren't they?
Yeah, and was like, you could use some color correcting on the music choice. I'm like, hey, listen, that was my first video.
When I started talking to a camera for the first time, just sitting and recording, this was back in 2016, right? Because I realized if I'm going to be unlike most salespeople in my industry, they need to hear me and meet me virtually before I sit down across from them. So they kind of have an idea of who they're meeting. I was stiff, not animated. I looked like I was half asleep. It was embarrassing. And then, believe it or not, the pandemic was really helpful because I learned even better because I did so many webinars. I learned how to talk to a camera like it's somebody sitting across the room from me. I didn't have that skill prior to that. All of my presentations were live, in person, which I love. So much energy from that. But a lot of it, I learned how to do it virtually. And so now I can talk to a camera like I'm talking to somebody else just sitting across the room.
Okay, something I think both of you hit on so it's all about this perseverance and resilience and keep trying things. But do you know why that's so hard?
Because I get beat up all the time by life.
Well,
that too.
Because one of my favorite Rick Rubin quotes ever, when he wrote The Creative Act, one of my favorite books of all time, is that your taste precedes your skills. Okay? So every single person on this planet, they know what looks good. They know what sounds good to them. They have this, your taste precedes what your skills can accomplish. True. So you're going to create something and there's always some part of you that's going to be like, I can do better. Or it's not exactly it's not perfect, right? And that can be something that really stops you from creating because you're like, it's just not like if you I'm sure when you created that video, yes, you were proud of it, but there was probably a part of you that was like, I wish I had done this. And I know that we are like that on projects where, okay, this was like 80% of the way there, but I want to do this and this. But the goal is that you use that as a marker to encourage you to keep going because guess what? Your skills, the only way to improve them is to keep going and to keep improving.
So a couple of weeks ago on Sunday, I was driving. And one of my old mixes from my records before college, so I went to school for audio engineering, and I was like, oh my God, this sounds so bad. And I went on this trip on memory lane, and I just started playing records that I worked on over the years, different artists, different people, and you see the progression, right? From 2014, 2015, 2016, and all the way to 2020 when one of the records I worked on, I'm like, bro, this is a hit. This is a fire song. The mix, the vocal tuning was just on point. And that progression does motivate me to continue pushing the boundaries. Am I going to go back to the studio and work on records? Probably not. But the same principle applies to what we do here at work and how we push the boundaries with strategy, with storytelling, or giving the reins up to, for example, Casey with the videos. And then now she's schooling me how to edit videos. I'm like, oh, snap, I didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a constant innovation. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody other than me.
It does, because who you were, ideally, who you were 3 years ago, let alone 5 years ago, you shouldn't be the same person. If you're growing and learning and working with others in a positive environment, you should be way different than you were before in a good way. Yeah. If you're in a bad environment, you could be way different. When you're in a positive environment and you're surrounding yourself with people like that, you should definitely see a significant difference from where you are now to where you were before, and that just means you're growing.
Yep. We're going to link down below his Amazon account where he can find all his books and his Audible accounts.
And his LinkedIn profile, because if you want to know what a good LinkedIn profile looks like, he's the place to go. We're also going to be doing some really exciting things as we partner over the next few months, so stay tuned, check out our social medias, and you'll be able to find out more. Thanks, guys.
Meet you well.